Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bound to Talk Football. I'm your host, Blake Walker, along with Paul Arridge, fresh off of studying from or for another test or homework, I should say.
It's homework, yeah. Big
Paul's
psych.
got a big psych thing going on for Northern Iowa, so we'll let him do that. But we're glad that Paul was able to hop on. If you can guess the time of when we are recording this starting, you get a cookie. How about that? You get a cookie. If you figure out and comment below what time Paul and I are starting this podcast, you get a cookie. So congratulations. Paul, we're going into week 4. This is our midweek episode here. Always enjoy doing these midweek episodes that we can ask questions. What's up?
Nice casual episode, midweek casual.
Nice casual. This will come out Thursday, and then our game day one, week 4 preview will come out on Friday morning. So thank you to everyone who's watched, listened, subscribed. We're having a couple more issues on the podcast side. I'm going to try to get that figured out. I think we've just used up too much storage. We just need to buy more storage on the podcasting platforms. But we're going to keep things rolling on YouTube. We really appreciate everyone for watching. This is our questions, hot takes episode. I do want to preface by saying we got a lot of volleyball questions and volleyball hot takes and cross-country questions. I can say next week there is a plan to release Bound to Talk Volleyball, the first episode. It will be kind of a mid-season look at what's happening across the state, and then we will jump into more as the postseason goes on for volleyball. Plan to really ramp up volleyball coverage here as the next couple weeks go on. So keep an eye out for that. But we're excited. I don't know. Yep. What?
Ankeny's winning it all. There you go.
Ankeny's winning it all. There you go. There's some good teams. Very good teams. Clear Creek Amana, I had that post the other day. They look dominant. But I just wanted to say we're not going to answer volleyball and cross-country questions on this podcast because this is Bound to Talk Football. But Bound to Talk Volleyball will be coming soon. I don't know who's going to be my co-host in that. It's not going to be Paul because Paul just ain't got that volleyball knowledge. But we'll see. Maybe it might be Abby. It might be Leah. We'll see what happens. Or maybe I'll bring in somebody else. Anyway, let's jump into our questions. We had a good chunk of questions being asked. Paul and I will give our prediction, upset of the week prediction. Paul will have to be put on the spot because he didn't put his in. So we'll get Paul figured out here. Let's start with our first... let's start with our first question from Anthony_24_. This is just kind of a general question, and I don't think we've ever really talked about it. He asks, when did Bound start up? Well, technically, Varsity Bound, what it used to be, started, I think we took over Quick Stats in 2017, I think. 2017 or 2018. Obviously, we used to be Quick Stats, and everybody remembers, well, not everybody. Are we moving past the generation of Quick Stats?
I was a big Quick Stat guy.
So we're on the cusp. Yeah, I feel like we're on the verge of Quick Stats being forgotten. Never forget where you came from. Quick Stats was the original stat go-to place. I'm biased. I think Bound has improved upon that. We're improving every single day. We got a new app coming out soon, everything else. Anyway, so Bound started in 2018. The social media side of Bound, or Bound Media, as we call it, started in 2020 when I was just like posting stuff on Twitter I went to Grinnell, obviously. I was posting like Little Hawkeye Conference stuff, mostly 3A stuff because that's where I grew up in. Sam reached out to me, Sam Schill, our boss, the head of Bound, reached out to me and basically said, hey, we see like you're posting this stuff to your personal stuff. We're trying to start this thing up. Would you want to take over social media? I was like, yeah, sure. So I was like, okay, they got a good chunk of followers to be able to grow up on. He handed me the Instagram account and he says, all right, run with it. And we had 100 followers. 100 followers. We didn't have a Twitter account. We didn't have a Facebook account. We just had 100 Instagram followers. And our posts were just like your standard HR, PR, like, hey, we're Varsity Bound. We do stats. So then it was just kind of, I just went with the flow. I started a week, like 3 days before the 2020 football season. Obviously, that's still kind of in the middle of COVID. It was in the middle of COVID. And I just kind of took it off from there. I was just doing whatever. And then some dude named Paul Erridge made his own stuff, and I was like, all right, we got some competition. So I had to up my game. And and then eventually we just kept getting bigger and bigger, slowly but surely. And eventually I talked to Sam. I'm like, I need help. Like, I can't do this by myself. We're growing quick, but I was like, a one-man army, there's no way I could do it. And I wasn't. Like, I mean, I was doing all I could for every sport, but I wasn't able to hit every sport. So we hired Paul, and I think quickly after we hired Leah and Sydney. Like, were you guys in a group?
Yeah.
Okay. So we hired Paul. Like, we knew immediately, we're like, okay, we're going to take out our competition. It really wasn't competition. We're like, we're like, okay, we got to take this guy out. Like, we cannot let him grow. We can't really let him grow. So we tossed Paul a dollar amount, and we're like, hey, here you go, buddy. And Paul accepted. And then we're like, okay, now there's two, but I was like, we need a female representation as well. So we hired Leah and Sydney through a little bit of scouting. We put out applications, and then that really took off. We started posting more women's sports. We were already posting a lot because I had posted a ton. I really enjoy the girls union. I think they're phenomenal. I think the association's great too, but I had worked more with the girls union, calling games and whatnot, and it just kept growing. And then eventually this past summer, I was like, we just keep getting bigger and bigger. So I went to Sam again. I said, we need more help. And originally it was only going to be maybe one person. And then we put out the application process again, and we just had so many good applicants, even some that we didn't hire. And we hired Jack, and we hired Matt, and then we hired Abby, and we hired Ellie. So
Jack's mid. Not that great.
Jack's mid. He was the late entry. Jack was kind of off the table, and then, he just came begging to us through email. He's the only high schooler in the group. It shows. We need him to mature a little bit, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
But it's been great. I personally can clearly see the improvement from when they came on in August. I could see the improvement when we brought you on, and from that,
now we're at 37.
So we're at 37.7K, 37.7K, 14.1 or 2K on Twitter. It's just unbelievable to think about. In 3 years, we were at 100 followers, and now we're this.
Where were we at even last year? It was like, what, 17?
I'm not sure. I
think you're at 17K, right?
People always ask, like, what's the goal? And I'm like, 50K. And then they were like, is 100K possible? And I'm like, well, if you think about it, people usually just don't unfollow. We're always going to have new kids coming in. Like, there are kids in 4th grade now that don't have phones that eventually will get into middle school and high school, and they'll probably follow bound, So it seems endless, and we just keep getting better every single day. We keep improving every single day. We appreciate everyone for following along, but that's been the journey. So we just keep getting bigger. This podcast, YouTube, there's so much more on the horizon that people don't know about that has been talked about behind the scenes that we're just trying to progress and it's cool. It's I'd say it weird, but Bound Iowa media is kind of like my baby. It's just kind of grown up, and I'm so proud of what it's become, and I'm proud of you guys for what you have done for us. So that was our first question. It wasn't really football related, but I thought we should clear it up because not a lot of people know about it. A lot of new followers. So shout out to Anthony for the question. Let's go to Tylke _ Lincoln 06. He says, it wasn't all questions. He says Jaxon Cherry of Webster City, running back, is the most underrated player in the state. I'm going to come out and say I think he's too good to be underrated.
We both agree. I think we've gotten to this point where he's too good to be underrated. So
748 yards, 10 touchdowns. I think he's averaging 10 yards per carry. I think the overrated's out the window. I remember him his sophomore year. I think like we had, you see the name and you're like Jaxon Cherry, like he's pretty good. And then last year, pretty good. This year, it just feels like he's taken the next big step. And like Tyler and Jack were saying, it's not just on offense. Like defensively, he's really good, and he's Webster City. I mean, Tyler said it. If Jackson's not on that team, you never know how that team is. But because Jackson's on that team, he is the team, and he's a huge part of it. If he's off, they're off, and we've said that every week. I don't think he's the most underrated player in the state. I think he's truly one of the best players in the state.
Yeah. One thing I guess you could say he's underrated in the sense of offers. Doesn't really have a lot of big offers. So, I mean, I could see that reasoning. But I think socially wise, I think people know who he is at this point. He's too good. He's like the Derrick Henry of high school football.
I compare him to I think there was a Darling at Winterset that was really good.
Dawson
and he
Forgy?
was
Dawson Forgy?
Oh yeah, that was it. Dawson Forgy from Winterset. And then I'm clearly biased, but that year Wyatt Hunter of Grinnell was also on an absolute tear, like almost 200 yards a game, had a 453-yard rushing game against Oskaloosa. Those two, he reminds me of that type. Like, ironically, class 3A, 4A, around that. Just under the radar, he'll get you 200 yards. They're built kind of the same. Obviously, Dawson got to the Dome. So, you just never know. Could Webster City get to the Dome? You never know. That's not part of the question. But is he the most underrated? No. I'd say he's just one of the best, flat out. And he's becoming not a household name, but becoming a pretty well-known name across the state. And when your name's Jaxon Cherry, like, how can you not? Like,
Cherry Bomb.
Yeah, Cherry Bomb. Aiden_Hudson says, does Van Meter three-peat? I really like this question because 2A is Central Lyon, Van Meter, rest of the field.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have told me week 1 and asked me, I would have said no. And then I think it's Baumhover is his name, their quarterback. He has started to figure things out. And Ben Gordon is huge on offense. The linebackers, all 3 of them that returned, very good, including Ben Gordon. But this quarterback has really started to figure things out. And I'm like, okay, Van Meter's got a quarterback. That was my biggest worry coming into the season. It's looking like Central Lyon versus Van Meter in the 2A title game. But I don't know if you have their stats pulled up, Paul, or anything. But I'd say, I don't know. It's tough to predict halfway through. I think they have a very, very good chance to three-peat.
I'd say they're like, it goes, I don't know exactly how odds making goes, but I go like -100, -100, or like they're like tied. Van Meter and Central Lyon. That's what I'm talking.
They're right there. They're just good. And it's just a program culture, you know. I was given an insight before every game. One of their coaches, well, technically we have 2 coaches on our staff at Bound, Brian Gordon and Drew Gordon. Brian showed me literally one of their pregame rituals before every single game. They lay out on their backs in the locker room. They turn on this music, and I don't know if it's Brian, I don't know if it's whoever it is, gives like the same speech. At least I think this happens every game. Gives like this a most astounding speech I have ever heard to get people hyped. And then that's it. Like, they give the speech, they're told to close their eyes, they turn the lights off, and they just sit there in darkness while the coach walks around and gives this speech. He showed it at like a AD conference or whatever a couple months ago. I think it was back in June. And he did this with all these like ADs in this room. And he finishes this, and he's like, that's what happens with Van Meter football all the time. And I turned to Drew. I'm like, no wonder you guys have won so many games. I was like, if I heard that every game, I'd run through a brick wall and I'd never want to lose. I wish you could see it because it's so cool. But yeah, I think Van Meter could three-peat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
that game is gonna be nuts if that happens.
How impressive do we? There's been a couple three-peats. How high do we rank that three-peat, especially if they do it moving up a class?
This is tough. Where are the other three-peats?
Well, I'm not, Dowling three-peats.
I think Dowling is easily the most impressive.
Yeah.
7 straight in biggest class? It's ridiculous.
I don't think that – you think that'll ever happen again?
No, I think
I don't think
it's too good all around at this point.
I don't think it's
I'd be up there. I'm moving up a class and still dubbing.
Yeah, I don't know. And not question. Paul, add on to that. We talk about the relaxed, laid back part. Aiden, thanks for the question. We appreciate it. We'll go Muller Zane 18. He says it's a hot take. He says Gilbert goes 8-1. I'm going to read off their schedule the rest of the way. This week they are at Boone, home against Hoover, home against Carroll, at Bondurant, at Newton, home against Pella. They are currently 3-0. I think they'll lose to Bondurant. I think that's the one loss. The only other game, Paul, is Newton.
Yeah, I was about to say Newton.
Like, that's pretty much it. But there is a real chance Gilbert, in fact, could go 8-1 after going 1-8 last year. I think 2-7.
Yeah, there's a real chance that'd be a crazy turnaround. Yeah, Bondurant and Newton are the only games I see on that schedule that are like they could lose it. They do also get that on the road back-to-back weeks, which kind of sucks for them. But yeah, Tigers.
I'll give Pella credit. Pella could be tough.
Yeah.
We don't know about Boone. We have a question about Boone later, but Boone, you never know. I think I agree. I mean, we both agree. I think Bondurant is just very good. I just think Bondurant's very good. I think Newton could be the toughest. Like you said, off the road, you might lose to Bondurant, and then you got to regain momentum, try to get back going to Newton. 8-1 Gilbert team, though. But I will say, if they go 8-1 and their only losses to Bondurant, their RPI, like I hope they won't expect a very high RPI. Because what are you thinking? 7, 6, 8?
I agree. 7, 6, 8. I agree. I mean, that'd be impressive for them though. Like, I'd be happy with it.
They beat Carroll, didn't they?
Yeah,
I think
21-14.
So that's a good win. We'll see how good Carroll is. Speaking of Carroll, this is a great transition. What can really help Gilbert in the RPI? King Pole King _2. His hot take is Carroll upsets Creston this week. I am going to say no.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. But speaking of RPI, that would boost, Gilbert's RPI if Carroll upsets Creston. I just don't think there's enough on Creston. If you want to, Paul, go ahead and pull that up. I don't think there's anything that jumps off the page very well for Carroll.
Yeah, it's a home game. Carroll Athletic Stadium. Let's get pumping for Friday.
We're going to have a photographer there.
Yeah, we are. Because we know it's upset. I'm just kidding.
As the weeks go on, we'll learn more about Creston. They are so well-rounded. Just so well-rounded. Running back that can get you 150 a game. A quarterback that can get you 300 a game. That's what Cale Turner's been doing. A defense that can really get stops.
Nothing jumped off the stat page, by the way.
Imagine if Lewis Central beats Bondurant this week. Then what? Then we're like, whoa.
It's been just a everyone beats each other type.
Is there a world where Creston could be the number one team in Class 4A?
No.
I mean, think about it.
Xavier.
I guess. We'll see.
I'm still with Xavier being the number one team. I don't know.
Yes, I agree. But yeah, North Scott, couple weeks.
North Scott's knocking on the door. But hey, wink, wink. For the later part of the ad.
What? Are you copying me?
No.
Oh,
I was about to actually. Then I saw you put it down. I was like,
okay. I don't think Carroll upsets Creston, but I will be very impressed, King Pole King, if Carroll does upset Creston. If you're a Gilbert fan, you need Carroll to upset Creston. You're going to make the playoffs anyway if you're Gilbert. But just thinking down the line, hey, wouldn't mind, sneak a win in there. That goes for Boone, Hoover, Carlisle, Bondurant, Newton, Pellet. Depends on who you beat. Body King 87. What's with all the Kings out here? Body King 87. How far can Bedford go? Well, I was looking at their schedule, Paul. I've said it. These boys remind me of Waco from last year. They get East Union this week, at Mormon Trail, home against Stanton, at Lamoni, Southeast Warren. Their toughest game is going to be Southeast Warren. I think Bedford goes undefeated. I can't say what will happen in the playoffs, but I think they have a very good chance to go to the Dome.
I would disagree. Looking at their schedule, I don't see anyone that's that crazy. And they just got off a huge win against Lennox.
That's a big win.
Yeah, it was big not comeback, but they warded what's the word? They feud off, whatever it is. They stopped the comeback from happening, completing.
Fended off.
Fended off. There we go. There's the word. It's 1:00. Help me.
That's a good team. Like Lennox is good, man. They'll make a run to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
they got that.
You passed your biggest test. So good luck the rest of the way. I think Bedford goes undefeated. I think they could have a great chance to go to the Dome. I'll be curious because once we get to the playoffs, then you really see what you stack up. By the way, we can talk about it maybe later in the year, but 8-player playoffs are going to be insane because it's going to be like the final 16, and I think all 16 teams can make it. Minus
balanced spreadsheet for a 8-man team. I feel like every 8-man team I look at, like it's balanced stats.
Oh, yeah, everywhere.
Which is rare for an 8-man team.
I still think Winfield Mount Union and Gladbrook are 1-2, but behind them, everything. I'd go locks, Gladbrook, Rhinebeck, Winfield Mount Union, locks to the Dome. The rest is up for grabs. Yeah. Easily. So, I don't know. We'll just have to see. I could easily see a 2-loss team making it to the Dome, an 8-player. That just doesn't happen very often, if any. But I'm excited to see that.
What's up? Whitmore. Jack Whitmore's team, Bedford.
That's true.
But it's his team.
Go Bedford. Have a good season. Tim Murphy 798 says, what do you think the chances of PV going far this season? PV is a very interesting team. Their schedule goes as such. They will play Cedar Rapids Prairie this week at home, at Dubuque Senior, home against Cedar Falls, at Muscatine, home against Iowa City West, at Linn-Mar. Paul, I don't think they lose a game the rest of the season. Maybe. Who do you think?
Honestly, I'm looking at it, and I agree to the most part that Cedar Falls game is obviously the big question mark. Heck, this week's kind of a question mark because both these teams play the exact same brand of football.
I don't know, man. I saw a Prairie team last week that was good, but at the same time, played Southeast Polk. But
yeah, they walked into a buzzsaw. There's no way they're being that set teams just right now at another level. I mean, it's crazy because this team, like that Bettendorf loss, just is so surprising.
It's so weird because we don't know how good Bettendorf is.
Yeah, like if Bettendorf's legit, then you kind of just shrug.
Can you pull up Bettendorf's schedule real quick? I don't think we don't have a Bettendorf question in here, but I'm very curious now about Bettendorf. Like what they have.
They've got at Linn-Mar this week. That's a big game for them, but I mean, I think they'll handle it. At Kennedy is the big game.
Okay, so we'll know.
Week 6 we'll know.
So we'll know.
Yeah, and they kind of have a cakewalk, like 7-2.
Right. So we will figure out who Bettendorf is, thus figuring out who Pleasant Valley is. So it's a wait and see game, I guess. But
I mean, to answer it, second round.
Yeah,
that's like that's
I don't think they're a dome team, but they're very good on the ground. They're a good running team.
I think they run into a 1 seed week, like the second round of the playoffs, and that's when they falter.
That's our thoughts on Pleasant Valley. You can never count them out because they're good. I mean, they're good at everything.
That's what he's doing.
Every sport. But shout out to Pleasant Valley. Good luck the rest of the season. We got a prediction or a hot take, if you will. Maddox Anderson 5 says Montezuma is going to beat Winfield Mount Union this week. I tell you what, Maddox, I don't hate this because Montezuma's offense is very good with Brady Bolton. It's Montezuma's defense that really worries me. They play on Saturday, Paul.
Okay. Saw the 3:00 start time. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, they play on Saturday. I have no idea why. I think Winfield Mount Union's defense is so good, man. Like, Montezuma's already going to have a hard time with that offense, but Montezuma's defense just hasn't shown me a ton. But their offense is good.
Yeah, I mean, that's sometimes all you need. I see it. It's tough. I mean, that basically what you just said there sways me to just say no. But
statistically, how they line up, both passing and running.
yeah, I mean, and just the fact that Winfield Mount Union actually has a decent defense, like a good defense.
Yeah,
it's gonna ward off. I mean, that offense will have to earn it.
Yeah, they will. I think it'll be good, but I don't think I see a world where Montezuma could win it, and I would legitimately be stunned if Montezuma wins it. Like, that's a big upset, one of the bigger we've seen of the season. But it wouldn't surprise me, I guess. But I just think Winfield Mount Union's very good. Like, they're right up there with
Yeah, I think
Black
they're there.
Prime.
I think they've arrived, like we said in the preseason. We're hoping they'd arrive. It looks like they have.
One of our predictions that we hoped was going to be good that has somewhat turned out. So we're happy about that. Kale Fustos says Glenwood doesn't lose a game the rest of the season. This is a bold take because their schedule goes as such. They get Denison Schleswig this week. Then they go to Lewis Central. Then they go to Winterset. Then they come back home against DCG. Then they go to CB Lincoln, Council Bluffs and Lincoln. And then they finish the year against Norwalk. I see 2 other losses, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost a hard back end. To say they're going to go undefeated is pretty bold, which, I mean, isn't a shot to them because RPI is going to be fine with them. They're going to have a good RPI.
I'm so curious about Lewis Central. They are the biggest question mark, I think, of any team right now, besides obviously a couple 5A teams. We just don't know. Like, Lewis Central could go out and beat Bondurant this week, and I'm like, I don't know what to think. Like, who are you? I don't know who you are. We don't know about
they're top 2.
But then
some people say they're 2 now, I guess. But
that's the thing. I'm not sure. The game, I mean, I hate to say it. I'm very high on Norwalk. That Norwalk game at the end of the year might be a 50-50 shootout.
Yeah.
Based on these quarterbacks.
Yeah. No, that quarterback battle was nuts.
It's just so interesting, man. That's another one we'll talk about in our preview on Friday, but Norwalk ADM, that's cinema. That is going to be absolute cinema, that game.
52-56.
Well, so in 2020 they played, and it was 50-49 was the final score. So if you remember, I can't remember the quarterback's name. I feel like the last name was like an H, started with an H. Threw for like 400, 500 yards. It was like an insane game. No, it was 2020. But it's got the feeling of that type of game. Anyway, Glenwood not losing a game. I would be very surprised if Glenwood didn't lose a game the rest of the year. And like Paul said, they could lose 2 more. They'll be in the playoffs at 6-3. They'd be a dangerous 6-3 team because they barely lost to Harlan. Again, Harlan, we don't know, man. I don't know about Harlan yet.
Yeah.
I will judge them based off Lewis Central, and then we'll just ride it out to Norwalk. But
I agree with.
Glenwood not losing a game the rest of the season, we'll mark it down, Kale. We'll see what happens. We'll come back to this if it's real. We should come back to every question or something like that. We got Paul. You want to say that name? How in the world do you say that name? Any idea?
I can't tell you.
We got Daikin Keahe. Keahe? Whatever.
I like Keahe.
He's got the hot take. If Centennial beats Southeast Polk this week, should they be number 1? Well, that's not a hot take. It's a question. I'm going to say no. They'll be number 2. But they're not going to be number 1.
I say they'll be number 2, but I think they have the best win in the state.
If you're the Des Moines Register, they'll probably drop in the rankings or something.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah. I mean, Dowling's, I don't know, their resume isn't great. Dowling's resume isn't some crystal clear.
So Dowling has beaten Valley, Ankeny, and Kennedy. 1-2, 1-2, 0-3.
Yeah. And
man, you're making me think.
Dude. I mean, Centennial is overtime away.
And Centennial will have wins over 1-2 and 3-0. technically.
And a loss to
a 1-2.
Yeah.
This is a tough question.
I'm
Now I'm rethinking.
just so devastated about that week 1 game, but it's obvious they don't care anymore.
I just don't think you can't. I just feel like now here's the thing. How much do you take? It's like in college football. Just because a program has history or has like the name, if Ohio State loses Bama lost to Texas this week. Bama didn't look good at all, but they're still number 10. It's because their name is Alabama.
Yeah.
Clemson lost to Duke. Clemson isn't as good anymore. They dropped them all the way back to 24th, whatever. I don't think they'd ever put Dowling out of number 1 if they were still undefeated and Centennial would be 3-1 over a Southeast Polk team. I don't care how good Southeast Polk is. I think they're the number 1 team in the state. I just don't think you can put Ankeny Centennial over Dowling. But then you ask the question, your head-to-head question. You're like, okay, so does that mean if Centennial and Dowling faced off right now, who would win? And you're like, I don't know, man. It's an interesting question. And then I hate to say it, Bettendorf people are going to be sitting there like, well, we're right there. Like, what are you talking about? They're like in the Gazette, Bettendorf's number 3 right now.
They got to live with the fact that
they're going to need to play some people.
Yeah, they got to earn it.
Bettendorf could go undefeated and not be top 5 in the RPI. It's very possible.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is just comes down to what you care about with your rankings. I don't really rank. I haven't ranked this year, but I was always big on just how the teams you played, how good were they, how'd you do. I'm not a big undefeated. If you're undefeated, you're a top 3 team guy. Because it's normally, and it's Iowa high school football. Like, hate to say it, it's not balanced like that. You can't just say like a D1 program. You can say they've beaten D1 schools and they're undefeated, but in high school you just can't say that. So I lean more towards your wins, your best wins, and Centennial had the best win against Southeast Polk. I mean, that's
on the road.
Best win you could get, yeah.
You know what? You persuaded me. I think, yeah. Because even if Dowling – go ahead.
I think it's bold to just – I mean, Dowling we know is good. That's the thing. Like, I'm more saying that with those, like – what's a good example? I mean, an Eastern Iowa team is just, like, that's 5-0. So a lot of people throw those guys up number 1 in the rankings, number 2, and they just – I don't know. I think Centennial I'd rank 1 just because it's crazy and it was week 1, a rivalry game. I can kind of get over a week 1 loss.
Yeah. A good loss.
Yeah.
Like they say with the college football playoff. I agree. I've turned to even if Dowling wins this week, they'll have a win over 2-2 Northwest. So they still technically won't have a win over an above 500 team because Kennedy could win this week, still won't be above 500. They'll be right at 500. Ankeny could win this week, still technically won't be above 500. Meanwhile, Centennial will have wins over Southeast Polk. And we know how good Southeast Polk is. So, sure, I'll go with you. If Centennial wins this week, put him at number 1.
Even though we don't make pools.
That's why we don't make pools. Yeah. We'll go with Riker.Dengler. He says, do you think Tipton is legit? Riker, you can't fool me. You are the starting quarterback of West Liberty who Tipton plays this week. So he wants to know. We're about to give West Liberty some bulletin board material this week, basically. Well, so let me tell you, Riker, Tipton is 3-0. Their win over Vinton-Shellsburg, they had their quarterbacks get injured on back-to-back plays and had to go and win. Their schedule ain't great. Their schedule the rest of the way ain't great. Aiden Boston, their quarterback, 229 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 101 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown. Landon Holub, 249 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. I think Tipton can go 9-0. I mean, I hate to say it. This team, their schedule just has worked out. They're just good enough. Are they going to go to the Dome? Probably not, but I hope they do. Like, they're just good enough. And their schedule has just worked out in their favor that I don't think they could lose the rest of the way. Now, granted, West Liberty has had their number the last couple of years, but Tipton just looks good. And to fight over adversity, I mean, I think they're going to be fine. This is, again, coming back. What do we define as legit? Yes, they're legit. They'll go 9-0. Book it. Put the quote on the table. Put the quote up on West Liberty's board right now. Send me a picture. And then if you win, I'll eat my words. But
make sure you put bound equals clowns.
Yes, make sure to put bound equals clowns. My nose is so itchy. What do you think?
I mean, looking at their schedule, they are not gonna lose. I agree with you. Opponent record 6-8-18.
Oh, I didn't look at that.
Yeah. They got an easy schedule. West Liberty, you're gonna have to pull something out here.
Tipton's got some athletes. They are a good cross country school, very good cross country school. So they got some runners. Granted, I say that, and then I think you can't. Most people play football don't run cross country because they have.
Yeah, that's what I say. They're the same.
In my mind, it was that. Tipton, sure, they're legit. They'll go 9-0. That's my thought. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Riker, good luck to you and your West Liberty Comets. I hope we gave you enough bulletin board material this week. Go Tigers and go Comets. Chase Chamberlain. Speaking of Boone, like we talked about earlier, is Boone for real this year? Christian Ingram leading the way in the running attack, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns. They have wins over Knoxville by 1 point, Storm Lake, and a 3-quarter win over Des Moines Hoover because of the power outage. Is Boone for real this year? I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean,
here's the thing.
We're going to find out week 4, 5.
What's their schedule?
Yeah. They play Gilbert, and then they play ADM, Indianola, North Polk, and Ballard.
Oh.
So they got the dogs coming up.
So they could go 4-5.
They got to win like Gilbert.
2 games?
They got to beat Gilbert, it looks like.
Okay.
And then they can squeak in.
All right.
Hopefully. They could be a 6-win team.
Okay. So then it gets interesting because I can tell you right now, Ballard's all right. They're decent. We got to be careful what we say here because we don't want to be rude. Boone is good. Like, they're good. This is a good start. This is a Boone team that has not been good the last couple of years, and I'm sure they'll tell you that. It's good to see them winning. These starts being 3-0, that's 3 wins under your belt that you don't have to worry about. Now you look ahead and you're like, realistically, we just need 2 more wins. I'd love to go back. There's not many 5-4 teams that miss the playoffs. I mean, 16 teams out of, I don't know how many, Boone's 4A, I think. It's 16 teams. 4A is loaded, but they're top heavy, if that makes sense. Like, really top heavy. The rest can be up for grabs. If you go 5-4, you're almost a lock because I just feel like in the last couple of years, maybe in the lower classes, yes, if you're 5-4, you could be 6-3 or 6-2 in lower classes because they sometimes only play 8 games. But 5-4, if you're Boone, just win 2 more, and I think you're in.
Yeah. No,
but
I agree.
Are they for real? I don't think they're. Again, what's your definition of for real?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think they're gonna go and compete for it, but I think they can make the playoffs. And for Boone, that's a big deal. That's a good school, good people.
Big deal.
If you beat Gilbert this week, guess what? You're 1 step closer. Like, that's a big win. So we'll see what happens. Like we talked highly of Gilbert earlier. Mm. This is a really good question. Our last 2 questions are very good. We got 1K_Kari. He says, the higher the class, the better the offense, defenses, players, etc. Basically what he says is, are 5A teams better than A teams? I wanted to think about this just a little bit more as we went along. I didn't take any notes about this, so I'm just kind of going in blind. My ordeal is, let's go by team basis. How about this? Can Southeast Polk, let's line it up. Can Southeast Polk beat Van Meter? Yes. Okay. Can Williamsburg beat Southeast Polk?
No.
Let's think. Can Van Meter beat Lewis Central?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. There we go, Paul. Thank you for following along with my social experiment. It's a case-by-case basis, in my opinion. let's take a look. So offenses, in terms of whole teams together, the higher the class, the better the team, in my opinion. Minor circumstances where you're like, okay, maybe not. If we're talking best of the best, defeating the best of the best in the lower classes, yes, I'd say so. But let's talk offenses. ADM's offense or Norwalk's offense could outduel West Hancock's offense or St. Andrew's offense or, dare I say, Grundy Center's offense. But say Harlan's defense could outduel Ankony's defense. I'd take that bet. So I look at it, it's a case-by-case basis. Now, players, I don't know about you, Paul, last 5 years, there's good players everywhere.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it was, okay, just the higher classes, whatever. Last couple years, Cooper DeJean came from a 1A school, and Cooper DeJean was better than almost every single person above him. So players, I don't think they get better as the classes get higher. Look at Cam Buffington. He's playing 8-player football. He's going to go to Iowa and be a star. Like, I'm going to call a shot now. He's going to be a star at Iowa. And he went to an 8-player school. I want to hear your take on this.
My take is to be concrete, you want to just a straight to the point answer for this. Every 5A champion will wipe any team lower than it.
Yes.
The 5A champ, 4A champ, whatever you want to say, for like previous years, they will wipe whatever team lower. As for the average, I like thinking average player. I think the average 5A player is better, but you have, like you said, those instances of a Cam Buffington or a Cooper DeJean that would be a dog in those 5A classes, obviously. Like Cooper DeJean would not miss a beat. So it really comes down to case by case. I agree. But I think there is the blanket statement that if you are at least even a 5A dome team or a 4A dome team, you're better than a lot. And that's not because of some rude, like I'm saying these schools suck. It's more of, there's more people and better facilities, just how it works.
Could a Class 1A dome team, top 4 dome team, beat a 5 or 4 win 4A team or 5A team?
No.
Okay. And you think size? Like you think facilities, everything else is the main difference?
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with you on that because depth is a huge part of that.
Yeah. And you said 1A. A 3A team, though, like a Williamsburg, I think they could beat a 5A. 5 and 4.
Again, it's case by case basis. Yeah. Literally.
It's just, you get to a low. I think there's a blanket point, like 1A on down. I think it's not a chance.
It's so tough. I agree. I think 1A is that cut mostly, maybe down to A, because you got to think size. And it's not like this question was, could a 1A team beat a 4A team? That's not the question. It's just the higher the class, the better the offense. I don't think so. You got to think they're all playing football through Class A. I'm sorry, I'm going to leave out 8-player because it's different. It's football, but it's not the same. A Class A offense could be just as good offensively statistically than a 5A school. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe scheduling wise, that's big. But I look at West Hancock the last couple of years, or these teams that just pound the rock, just are so good on the ground. And I'm like, statistically, yes, they are better offenses than the higher classes. But we're going to stick out of the conversation of if that offense went against this offense, which offense would win? Because that's invalid. But defensively, it just gets so tough because offensively, you can be really good. But there's always a class above you that you're like, okay, they're good, but they're Class 4A level good. That's another thing. Each class is different. Just because you're good at 1A in passing doesn't mean you're going to be good at 1A or 3A in passing. It's just there's levels to this.
There's levels in. Going back, I always think the best teams. the average team kind of debate. I don't think really like the average 5A team against the average 1A. I mean, the average 5A means that as well. But you got to think those 5A schools, those state champion teams are littered with D2 talent, not just D1 talent. Like, it's all over the place. Like the Ankeny team that won it a couple years ago, literally everyone on that roster, most of them either had D2s looking at them and I just don't know if that's even a thing.
So, if anything, we separate this. 5A is the best. Yeah. We know that. 5A is the best. But I will draw a line at 5A and say we get 4A, 3A. It's grouped. Like, I feel like it's a 5A, league of their own. 4A, 3A, boom, right there together. They can beat each other, Harlan, Lewis Center, blah, blah, blah. 2A, 1A, league of their own. A, let's shove them up in there. 8 players, different. I'm sorry we're not talking about 8-player, but we'll talk about players in 8-player, I guess. Because 8-player players specific have gone on to have great careers. But it's a levels system, and even Class A. Well, I can't say that because we've seen Class A teams go up and beat 1A teams. We saw St. Ansgar go up and beat Osage in Class A to 2A. So there's levels to this and outliers. Van Meter, outlier,
Yeah, very tough for a class or a team to make a jump more than 2 classes.
Yeah,
and beat a team.
And
that's why we have classes.
It is. I mean, it's true. And size is everything. And I'm not just talking school population. I'm talking, you go to a 5A game, stand on the sideline. They're just bigger. And 4A, the good 4A teams, they're just bigger. And then you're working your way down and you'll get a couple guys. Like, when you and I sit on the sideline at the Unidome and we're like, dang, some of these 1A guys are big and some of these A guys are big. But overall, like if you put the size all together in a ball and you were like, all right, what's bigger? It gets smaller as you go down. So yes, the higher the class, not every class is different. Yeah. Just because it's 5A doesn't mean they'll have a better offense than 1A or 2A.
I mean, football is the only sport like that.
So that was another thing we talked about. So we've always talked about it bound. We totally would love to do an NIT, preseason NIT for basketball. I just think it would be so cool, a tournament. If we did it, I want 1A teams playing 5A teams or 4A teams. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't care. And someone was like, I was talking with a couple guys today, and they were like, well, that's not fair. I'm like, what about it? It's basketball. It's not size. It's not skill. I mean, it's skill, but a 1A team, I'm trying to think. Western Christian the past couple of years on a tear in basketball. 4A, maybe not. Could have gone and easily handled a 3A team, in my opinion. It's just.
But yeah, it's just bad. Those sports are so different. Football is one of my sports where, like, realistically, you don't see many upsets that you just couldn't see happening. Like in basketball, it's very tough to predict.
Volleyball. I mean, I know you don't know a ton about volleyball, but granted, Dyke New Hartford's a whole different monster. Goes up and just Dyke New Hartford. Okay, we'll use it. Dyke New Hartford goes up and handles 5A schools. Just handles 5A schools. And you're like, realistically, that shouldn't happen. But it does because it's per sport basis. Track. Look at track. Invitationals all across the place. You're playing all these different people. It's just football's different. It's a team. I mean, I'm not saying other sports it isn't a team thing, but I'm just saying it's different.
11 bodies. It's 11 bodies, 22 total that have to be. That's a lot.
On a basketball court, it's 10 bodies.
Yeah.
On a volleyball court, it's 11, 12. Sorry. It's there. It's a good chunk. It's 12. Smart.
Good math.
Oh, very good question. I'm sure we will have a lot of people chime in. Please chime in on this. I think this is a very good question. It's always brought up. It's always thought about. But, do whatever. Paul, you want to read this next question?
Shout out, Dad.
Shout out Paul's dad.
Left this question: best QB, tight end / wide receiver duo in the state. I got mine off the top of the head.
So you go with yours.
I got Will Nuss and Jacob Simpson.
All right.
I think that's the best duo, just overall skill-wise. I think there's an argument for a Moberly and either Zelenovic or Robbins.
Yep.
Eli Robbins, shout out him. Him and Harder are going off as well.
Those boys seem to have something dialed in.
Yeah.
I went a statistical approach, and I guess I'll go my visionary approach too, but I wanted to go statistical. If you statistically wanted to know who the best wide receiver quarterback duo on the state, it is Perrin Solzy and Trayton Travis of Baxter. They have combined for 9 touchdowns this season. Perrin has thrown 12. So 9 out of his 12 touchdowns have gone to Trayton Travis. So that's your statistically the best. With my own eyes, watching film and everything else, it's Connor Moberly and Sam Zelenovic by far.
Yeah, that's right.
I haven't watched a ton of Simpson and Nuss.
I actually found I just thought of another one as well.
What's up?
Cyrus Courtney and Vincenzo June 4th day.
Okay, so Cedar Rapids Kennedy.
Yeah.
Of course, we're thinking 5A. So I'm going to try to think down 4A. I think Lewis Central's quarterback and Curtis Whitty. Nice 1-2 punch. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it. If we're picking, I'll change this just a little bit. Last 5 years, it's Tegan Kasperbauer and Aiden Hall by far. Like, clears everyone. There's a reason Harlan was just so good. It's because of those two. So,
I agree.
It's a good question. It's just fun. I love QB wide receiver duos. I think it's great. Salzer last year, and I can't think of his name, the wide receiver from they were unbelievable. Like, I think Dallas only passed him. Like, it just felt like that. He had like 87 catches, and the closest next guy was like 13.
Morrow and Eli Reardon was a pretty good duo.
Yeah, Reardon. Boy, I miss him. He's at Notre Dame now, isn't he?
Yep.
Is he playing? I think he is.
He's gotten some playing time. I think he's hurt right now, but he's gotten some playing. Dang it. Freshman years, he got playing time.
Yeah, he did. Notre Dame, off topic. They're going to playoff, man. I'm telling you right now.
Nice.
Marcus Freeman, good guy. I'd play for Marcus Freeman.
All
right. That's our questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. That was a long question segment, 52 minutes. That means everybody's questions were great. Keep up the great questions. Honestly, phenomenal. We really appreciate it. It's time to move on to our upset prediction of the week. We always do this on our Wednesday show. I'm going with, it's not really a layup, and I don't think it's really much of an upset, but technically it's a team with a loss that will beat a team that's undefeated. I think Western Dubuque takes down North Scott at home. Western Dubuque gets this game at home. They only lost to Xavier by 2. Grant Glosser, very good running back. I think they're a good team. They are a set team, good defensive team. They can get the ball rolling. They obviously lost to Xavier last week. I'm curious to see how they re-step, but I like Western Dubuque in this one over North Scott.
Yeah, true. I mean, I hate to be kind of hypocritical of what I've been saying this entire time, but I think Centennial has a real shot at least keeping it close against South.
Okay. You can't just say keep it
I know.
close.
Hey, listen, there's not a lot of upsets to pick from, and you had mine already. So that's what I'm going with. I mean, I'm not going to be so – I can't be bold. I mean, we got to be reasonable here.
I'm trying to think of any others off.
Historically, this matchup's never close.
When's the last time Centennial won it?
2019.
Okay.
When Southeast Polk had Daly as a sophomore, Xavier as a sophomore.
I'm going to agree with you that it can happen. But then I could just see Southeast Polk come out and just light the world on fire.
That's what I mean. They do that every time they play Centennial, exactly, for the most part. And yeah, I hate to stick with 5A all the time, but that's just what I know. And I think there's a real shot to keep it close, especially with how good Trent Smith's played.
The one guy called it before. I also think it's possible Montezuma could upset Winfield Mount Union. Oh, yeah. I think that's a possibility as well. Obviously, there's probably some under the radar that we're not thinking about, but I just think that could be a possibility down there in 8-player. So keep an eye on that one. That's going to be a fun one. I guess ADM over Norwalk. Technically, I'm really curious about ADM. We'll talk about them in our preview. Yeah, we'll talk about that in our preview. But it's Aiden Flores' team, baby. Good luck. Should be a fun one. That is it for us on our midweek episode of Bound to Talk Football. Again, we once again want to thank everyone for the questions. Great questions this week. Really good questions. I think we're going to have to do a thing soon once we get we're trying to work on gear and stuff. I think we should totally give the best question of the week some gear or something like that, like a shirt or something. So we'll have to keep thinking of that. We'll keep
some gear. Huh? Jakari would have gotten some gear.
Yeah, would have gotten some gear. Kari, phenomenal question. Make sure to
Roosevelt's starting quarterback. You know that, right?
I did not know. I just saw Kari. I'm like,
Kari,
but I didn't know that was Jakari Patton. I was like, shout out Jakari. We'll get you some football gloves in the future. Get those Bound football gloves up. Toss them up when you get a touchdown. So, one other last thing. Just before we head off, this is just last second news. We're going to post about it tomorrow. Des Moines Public Schools announced that October 12th is the first game ever at the new stadium. It'll be Waukee versus Roosevelt. Jakari, congratulations. You get to play in the first ever game at that stadium. I will be there. I get to call that game. I'm very excited. That's cool. I'm very happy for those. I haven't heard. I don't know if that means we're just not going to play at Drake Stadium anymore, which I kind of hope that doesn't happen because Drake Stadium is really cool, but really cool to get that opportunity. So I always said that this should be a midweek pod. Like if we get news or anything, obviously that's our news. So shout out our news for the week. Good luck to Paul on his 9-8. What?
Quiet news week.
Quiet news week. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's not a bad thing. Good luck to Paul on his psych stuff in the morning. We will see what happens. We will be back on Friday for our preview episode for week 4. It's week 4 already. I can't believe it. Thanks to everyone for watching, listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment. Tell us what you think of our questions as well. And we will see everyone on Friday. Thanks for listening to Bound to Talk Football. We'll see you next time.